missed orders, and just the fragility of some of the things that you could always count on. And I know I said a lot of this in a video, but where you used to be able to predict things and just know that you could count on things, or you could cover them up with inventory, or make it up with some hard work. All those things just they are just so different and fragmented than they've ever been before. And the things that worked in the past, and all the things that with all of us that have great experience and understanding and have been through turmoil before and all that, there's just things that just are so much different. And as difficult as it is, as disappointing as we are in the performance that we have, one thing I am not as ashamed of who I work with and how hard we're working and what we're doing for to try and correct these problems. I won't be made to be ashamed, because I know we're doing everything we can, and we're as good as we've ever been at what we do. There's just a lot of circumstances that we can't control, and that's just the fact. So I wanted to make sure that was real clear, that very proud of the people I work with and what they're doing to try and make sure we get this corrected and do all the right things. So how do we get here? Our lead times are crazy long, and now we're missing orders that are unprecedented rate, totally unacceptable. I sort of explained, all the problems with the unpredictability, but, we talk a lot about the employment issue. I was just talking to Ashley, our VP of HR, in preparation for this, about a couple of things. She just told me the preliminary numbers for December, the unemployment rate's 0.8%, less than 1% unemployment. That's down half a point from November in Du Bois County. The state of Indiana is 1.3%. So clearly there just aren't enough people. So what do you do about that? You try and get them from other places. And that's part of what we did with our launch of the 40 Flex plan this week, which we think will bring people that are looking for a different method of working and not trying to work hard. It's creative, it's innovative, it's no one else is doing it. So it's certainly taking a direction that no one else has yet. So we're hoping that's going to help. But again, there's one thing about trying to get employees, and then there's the other thing about getting them to show up and retaining them. Another thing that's really clear to me whenever I go to the plant or we give tours, and some of the reps that are on this call, I'm sure were with us for rep training a week or so ago, and there's a bevy of activity. We're making furniture, we're making a lot of it, and there's a lot of people out there working. So there's a core group of people that are really good at what they're doing and show up, and they're in a good culture. They're good teammates. So it's not like everybody that is in the employment pool is bad. That's not the case. It's either just they're not enough, or they become unreliable because they have other options, or just other things become more important to them. So as we're trying to figure out what to do, and we're clearly having trouble providing good information as hard as we're trying to get it, Chad and I talked a lot about how do we pull, what's going to make it, what isn't, all those kinds of things. And I was asking for, how do we get better information sooner? And do we create a liaison, or do we just continue to go to Brennan Shepard's, or what do we do? Well, from that, it was clear that, if interrupting anybody in manufacturing isn't the best idea. So I brought a couple of my key people together to talk about an option of us going to get it. And from that discussion, again, we recognize very clearly, one, we're farther behind than we thought we were. And two, we can get all that information, and it's still, there's no way to get it all because we're so far behind. So that brought us to the discussion, and all this happened since the video on Tuesday. That brought us to discussion really to cover the problem of being reliable, which Indiana Furniture has been for forever, and it's the thing that I think is so surprising. The best way to do that is for us to look at the orders that are in-house that are affected by the biggest problem we have is we're very behind at our flatline assembly plant, we call it FLA plant. And basically we need to take those orders and re-acknowledge them at a date that is extended out, that covers, one, not only where we're at behind now, but what we can produce today is different than what we could produce in October or November, whenever we schedule these orders. So we need to reset for what we know we can do today and what we'll be able to do going forward. So we're going to re-acknowledge orders that are at the FLA plant that are predominantly, there might be some mixtures of products, seating and otherwise. We'll have to sort through that. But in general, what we're doing is we're going to add 3 to 4 weeks, and it's going to depend on the timing of those orders to the dates that we're going to have on the ship dates. Now, I know that's a big problem for a lot of people that have a lot of plans in place, but we really believe that that's the honest reality picture we have right now, is that that's where we're at, and it's going to get worse unless we do something about it now. And I say get worse because next week we're not going to be able to produce that much more than we can now, and so we can see it getting worse over the next couple of weeks instead of better. So we're going to take that into account, and we're going to acknowledge accordingly to do a reset and get it in place. I know one of the questions that came in and said, you know, no info is like the worst thing, and the re-acknowledgement of it provides us a chance to have reliable information again, or at least not so much overwhelming information that we have to gather, that we have a chance to communicate and plan accordingly. So so that's our next step in correcting and getting back on track in knowing what we're doing. Another thing that comes up a lot, and it's a question that I understand, but it's about, hey, we've had an order for 14 weeks, let's say. It took a while to get it entered because we were backlogged in order entry because we were overwhelmed there with orders and stuff. So we've got that sort of fixed. But whenever we schedule product, like orders that we're receiving today and we're putting into the schedules at the lead times appropriate for whatever it is, 13, 14 weeks from now, we're filling buckets that are smaller than they used to be because we know that's how much we can do. So we're trying to correct it as we go out, but we continue to get orders that are equal more than that. And I think another question that someone asked was, how does National have lower lead times or better lead times than us? And the answer to that is, one, their bucket size is bigger because they're a bigger company, so they get more orders. So their bucket size is bigger. They also have more buckets. They have Kimball as a group had a hospitality group that isn't nearly as busy. They've got more levers to pull and people to choose from on how they're going to manage to get through what they've got. So clearly their orders don't exceed their capacities like ours do. So that's how they're doing it, and that's, I mean, we don't know the inner workings of them, but we know enough about how they do things to know that it really is a scale thing, or they're not equaling what their order input to what their capacities are. But back to the scheduling thing, if we schedule in October for an order to ship in January, clearly at that point we are entering orders that we are convinced we can fill. Well, as you progress to get to January, which is a long time, in short periods of time, you can react, work harder, and do things. Well, what's happened in that period of time, things have changed so much, you can't react. But the amount that we can do today just doesn't match it. Is I guess the point I'm trying to say. And anyway, so that's a problem. And so the scheduling just needs to be a reality, and that's what we're trying to do with this reset on the acknowledgements. One of the questions is lead time improvements. What are we doing? Is there opportunity to do that? Our seating lead times are improving. We're building new facilities, which we know are going to make us more efficient and give us more capacity. but those things take time. New machines can help, but in general, those things take time. But also there's some stability there. We're not standing on quicksand there. So that's good. And the new facilities certainly are going to help. Another question I had was about, is there an opportunity to suspend series? Like, can you take certain things and say, we're just not going to sell it anymore, so we can focus on the things that do sell and have more capacity available? And we can do that, but the way we've set up our manufacturing, our ability to do specials, the flexibility of our equipment and our people and our computer system and all that, really eliminating a series doesn't matter if you're still going to input the same amount of work. What solves it really is either having less orders or increasing capacity. And I hate to say it, but fewer orders is unfortunately going to be part of the solution, and we know that's going to happen. But that's kind of where we're at. Is you got to get things to match back up. And again, I don't think we're much worse. We obviously can't produce as much, but a lot of that's a short-term problem we've had with COVID here in the last month, and absenteeism as much as the other employment issues. Another question that came up was suspending potential contracts that we have that maybe aren't as profitable or things that we can do. And that's a good question. And are there things we can do to cherry pick to say, look, we don't just want to do that anymore? And I think over time, as we've gotten busier, there are certain things that we do not directly to say, hey, we're just not going to sell on that contract or anything anymore. But we certainly try and make sure we're competitive and profitable in all those places. But the thing there is, and we had a scenario a few months ago where we were trying to work a project to get some seating business from a competitor, and it was a lot, and it would have been a stretch for us to do. And we had a discussion about, well, do we really want to go after this business because we're already busy in seating? Well, if any rep out there, you have any orders that you don't want us to fulfill, let us know. My point about that is really, we can't deny a rep who's trying to sell our products our best effort to produce and be honest about when we can do it and how we're going to do it. And that would tie into really these contracts and things like that. Now, there's certain contracts or certain opportunities maybe we don't go after. And that's some of what we're doing with the discussion I said I had with a couple folks that got this whole thing started about our re-acknowledging. We're talking about changing priorities of people to react to what we've got rather than going and trying to get business, because that right now isn't our main problem. I think I've covered most of. There were a lot of people had questions that sort of duplicated themselves. One thing I wanted to talk about was our order entry, order entry process. If we get a clean order today, it takes 2 to 3 days for us to enter it. If it's not clean, then it's a communication back and forth that becomes some challenges, that's for sure. But our order processing isn't as dramatically behind as it was. And I know that still hurts because a lot of the times where we were 3 or 4 weeks behind in entering orders, we're now at the point where we're trying to ship those. So those lead times were long and the order extension was long. But right now that it's still challenging to get answers and get them entered quickly. But once they're clean, it goes relatively quickly and not out of bounds from what would be the norms. And I don't know if Tammy Russell, you sent me some details on that, if you have anything to add there.
I think it's just a real challenge we have right now with clean orders. So anything that anybody can do to help that process when we ask questions, to assist the communication or assist the dealer in getting responses timely, I'm surprised at the number of times we ask questions and we get no response, and we follow up 2 times, we follow up 3 times until we can get an answer. And I know in some cases the dealers are backlogged with their own work and their own workforce challenges, but anything you can do that can help us get to a clean order sooner is going to help that process. Like Mike mentioned, in the middle of December, we were averaging 14 days from the point of getting an order in hand until that order line was acknowledged. That's been improving since that time. We're down to an average of about 8 or 9 days now. But when it's a clean order, we're running around 3 days. So that is the difference. An order that's not complete, doesn't have good pricing, has missing information. That is the difference between a 3 or 4 day turnaround for your acknowledgement versus a 9 to 14. So anything you can do that can help us on that process, we would accept assistance in.
Another thing that came up in a meeting we had with the customer service team about, how do we gather better information, get what, the reps and the customers are asking for. One of the things, and this is a question certainly that was in the set that you guys sent, was about incomplete shipments. And it's another a big challenge, and we're predicting and making loads to go to certain places that we think are going to be complete based on our plan. Even when we reset a plan, for instance, a lot of you reps may be aware of this, but for the last few weeks, we've been sending out communication saying, hey, look, we know your order scheduled on Friday. It's not going to ship on Friday. That's because we're focusing on another set. Well, whenever you're focused on that set and certain things don't get done because either supply chain issues or we just don't have enough people to get them completed, the truck's being built throughout the week, we're going to let the truck go because we've got to keep things moving. And that's how that gets incomplete. Now, the information on specific items that either are or aren't on that truck eventually can be sorted out, but they can't be sorted out until you know the truck is gone, because you want to know that you got everything that you possibly can on that shipment, and then we can react to that particular instance. But again, it comes down to the inconsistency of our reliability to meet our targets based on things that change literally every day. I'm going to use this example of we're having problems with our box drawer supplier. We've never completely run out of all drawers, and we continually are getting information and shipments for box drawers. But last week, we needed to have them in the middle of the week to finish up orders. Then finally they said, hey, look, they're going to be ready on Friday, not on whatever day it was going to be. Well, by Friday, there's 50 or 60 units that can't be built because we don't have box drawers. Now, we got them, but we didn't get them till either late Friday or Monday, which now we're past the time where we were planning on shipping these items. So stuff like that when it falls out, and again, we can't count on what we typically could count on. It just becomes a real problem. One or two other things, and then I'm going to open it up to questions and or comments from anybody else on the Indiana staff if they're interested. But there were a lot of questions about, I say a lot, a couple people referenced, and in conversations I've had, referenced is there a possibility to get international immigrant employees? And it's a good question. It's not a new idea to us before any of you brought it up to us. It's been discussed, talked about, and there's a couple things that make it very complicated. One, there's a housing shortage as much as there is an employee shortage in the community, but also in a lot of cases there's a communication barrier. And one thing that's real important in a manufacturing setting, especially when machinery and things like that are involved, is you got to have a safe environment. So that safe environment, if you can't explain to someone and they understand clearly what you're telling them about what they can and can't do or should and shouldn't do, it can be a real problem. So there becomes a communication barrier. Even if you have a good interpreter or something like that, it still becomes a real challenge to talk to a wide variety of employees about that. Now, if the other thing is, and there have been some efforts by the community, but Indiana Furniture could go find maybe agencies and places that could do that. But really what we need to try and do, and it's not, again, it's these things have been discussed, but it needs to be a community effort because we're not the only ones in this community that need employees. So that effort to go find those international employees really needs to be a bigger effort than Indiana Furniture, because we just don't have the scale to do what needs to be done, either in communication, housing, coordination of getting people here. We are rural America, so that's a problem too. We're not a big city. So there's a lot of factors that go into that, and it's not been investigated and certainly been talked about again. So I just wanted to address that, and it'll continue to be discussed because one way or another, we've got to solve these problems. We can't keep going the way things are going. There's other, some questions about, what specifically are things we're doing. Specifically, I'm doing things today that I haven't done in the past. Specifically, there's employees throughout our organization that are doing things, thinking different, trying to clearly find ways to do things better. We've been a company for a long time that, really committed to continuous improvement, finding better ways and all those things. And I don't think that any of that's changed in innovation and things like that. And I believe, very strongly believe, that our manufacturing innovation and technology is especially for a company our size, but really for any size, is really top notch. And Chad's been involved in some programs with the state to do things and continuing to do other things that will improve that. But again, there's a certain lead time on equipment. There's certain things that have to be put in place. We have to have the facilities that can handle them. For instance, here in Jasper, Mill Street, if anybody's been in our facility, the original part of this building was built in 1905. We're moving our seating production out of here because there's things that we need to do in seating we just simply can't do here. And that was we recognized that well before supply chain issues and well before COVID and started the process. Now we're luckily closer to the end of that than we've been, other than starting it now. So it's not, again, anything new or any new revelation. But I think on a daily basis, I'm pressing for questions on Chad, and Chad's asking, hey, what do you think this will work? And we communicate a lot about it. I think we're on the same page way more than most manufacturing and sales guys are, in a sense that he knows and cares about what we all need. And I'm sensitive to what we're really capable of doing without totally blowing up the system and making it a lot worse, because I've certainly been involved in those situations too. Chad, anything you want to add about innovation or technology or the update on our facility?
Yeah, I mean, facility-wise, like Mike said, we've started. I was out there yesterday for a construction update. The steel's on the ground and it starts going up in the air next week. So big step, in a year from now, a lot of our operations will be in there. And what that's going to do, that doesn't help today, but in the future, what that does is it puts all our forces under one roof. We can share people, we can share resources easier, and we can do some of those automation things Mike mentioned. We're not waiting until then. Just on Monday, I'm going to be asking our board for approval for automation cell for machinery. We're going to spend $750,000, but the lead time on that equipment is 1 year. We're going to order it in February. We'll get it February 2023. And that automation, it's got to be part of our strategy. It is part of the solution, but that's going to free up 3 people to do something else. 3 out of 200. So it's part of the answer, it is not the only answer. So we're absolutely continuing to go down that path, and we will. It doesn't make things better fast, and it doesn't fix all of the problems.
I don't know if I got specifically everything that was submitted on questions. I tried to generalize most of the concepts in them, but I'd open it up to any questions or comments or anything else anybody'd like to ask us. We've got certainly, we want to tell you all the information we've got and a clear picture of where we're at and where we're going.
Hey, Mike, it's Mark Morolo. Can you address what the trucking situation is in Jasper? The reason why I'm asking is we recently had an order going to Long Island, and we shipped it, I believe YRC, and the entire order was destroyed and wound up getting canceled, and we had to credit the customer. And then I guess this week the uppercut to our area was that we heard one of our trucks was in an accident, and we had a bunch of orders on there, and everybody's asking what the status is, and is it going to take 14 weeks again, and do we have to bring the trailer back and inspect everything, which I would assume is the proper protocol. But what's the trucking situation in there? Is there a lack of drivers and trucks?
Mike, I can take that if you want.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I mean, we're no different than everywhere else, and it's not a Jasper thing. We'll use carriers that are local. We'll use carriers that are nationwide. YRC being an LTL carrier, they're servicing most of the country. And anytime we ship something LTL, I mean, you all know, those go through all those different terminals, get handled multiple times, and the damage is higher, or the occurrence is higher on those. Different carriers do better than others. I'll tell you, some of it's about that name on top, and a whole lot of it's about whoever's on that forklift that night whenever it gets to that terminal, when you deal with LTL. That other trailer that you mentioned, that is a local carrier that's less than a mile from here, is where their home base is. That's going a multi-stop truck, and yeah, they had an accident going down the road. That doesn't happen often, but what you just mentioned was just two different modes of transportation we have. One local to Jasper, one covering most of the country, but they both in that case ended with damaged product that now needs to be recovered. In total, we can get carriers. Mike hears it all the time. Anybody can get anything anywhere. It's how much does it cost right now? And it costs a whole lot more right now to get anything anywhere than it ever has. And it's really just about what are you willing to pay to get it there. So we can still find carriers because we're just paying whatever it takes to get it there. Yeah.
On the converse of that too, there's inbound freight that's a real challenge. And when you're trying to pull it, again, sometimes it depends on who's paying for the freight and how much you could control that. So that has an impact. And it certainly not only has an impact on us, but our suppliers and all the way up and down the line. It's, it's pretty common.
We're also doing a lot more live loads than we ever did before. Usually we because of the nature of our product, we're playing a big puzzle game. So we like time to try to pack it in there nice and tight and get the most on there and everything. But now just because of carrier availability and stuff, sometimes we got to take what's called a live load. They don't drop the trailer off and let us have, hours upon hours to do that. We've got about an hour or two to load that thing while the driver's sitting there, logging a little downtime. It's harder on our team, but we're doing that a lot more just to make sure we get a truck to get the product out.
Thanks, Chad. Any other questions or things we can answer about our basically manufacturing, lead time, all that? I'm going to revisit the re-acknowledgement thing here. I'll cover that here at the end, go over some details about what we're trying to do, how we're going to execute it, and that sort of thing. But before we get into that, or anybody asks any questions about that, I want to make sure we've got, manufacturing, supply chain questions answered.
Yeah, hey, Mike. It's Moses.
Hey, Moses, good to see you.
Yeah, same here. As far as order entry, the problems with that, has there been any discussion as far as doing electronic order entries?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there's been a lot of discussion about EDI. And, I've seen articles in industry things about people thinking manufacturers need to get more technologically advanced. And the issue with EDI is the people that send the information to you have to send it in a format that can be inputted by someone not looking at it and evaluating it. And whenever we ran into a little bit of we ran into our order processing issues, I've helped out just a little bit. Not that it was very significant, other than it really helped me understand some of the process. But I see a lot of the orders as they come in, print them off, and actually see them. And we go from everything from literally handwritten triplicate copies that would typically be faxed in to very nice, sophisticated orders that clearly could be EDI if you had that system. So the problem that we would have is the broad spectrum of how people order. So you have to get to a common place. Now, my theory and what I want to try and push as our plan going forward is whether a customer sends it handwritten on that triplicate form, or it's a nice clean order that comes from a CIF file. We got to get it to a common platform, and that common platform seems to be most logically CET. So you got to have all that detailed information up to date and clear. And once we get that, then you can go to the next step is how do we get it then into our system without people manually intervening. But the real problem with order processing that we ran into, one is the diversity of the orders and how we get them and what they look like and the information that's needed. Everybody knows on any given, just even a simple guest chair, how many different things you might have to have on there in order to get that order entered. So you got to get all that organized and understood. And then the other part that we're really running into now is there's so many things that you have to check on. You used to just, hey, we always knew we had enough casters. We always knew we had enough of this pull or whatever it might be. And a lot of that stuff has to be checked and reviewed, especially on sizable orders. So that also becomes an issue. But the EDI question is one that we've talked about a lot. It's really challenging. We don't want people to have access into our system, so there has to be a transition there. And I know it happens all the time. I know it happens at major manufacturers, but even like, I was a Knoll dealer at one time, and we were working on, and we were a beta site for doing EDI with Knoll. I don't think they called it EDI then, but they were doing it back then. That was a long time ago, but we could only enter Knoll product that way. So if we wanted an Indiana desk, that was their name back then, you couldn't order it that way. You still had to send the PO via fax or email or whatever. So it might be more than you were asking for, but I guess my point is we think and talk a lot about it. It's not foreign to us or something we're not interested in doing.
Hey, Mike, this is Dave Kravitz. I'd like to follow on that because I think it's an opportunity, because I think some of the challenges that we have with the people, with the housing, I don't think that we're going to be able to figure out a fix to that, and I don't have any idea what the fix for that is. But historically, over a lot of years, I've watched that transition in a lot of the manufacturers that I've represented. And I think, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, I know that, but once the dealer is trained, and most of them today are doing business with manufacturers that only allow business to come in on a CIF file. and they're trained in what they're, I think the benefit that they're seeing is that because if they want a certain finish, if they want a certain fabric, if they want a certain caster, whatever it is, becomes an attribute part of that model number, then it eliminates a communication issue between two different people. And once the acknowledgement goes back to the dealer, and that can happen quickly because there are no people involved, it's a simple process for that dealer to take a look, and then they own that. They own that responsibility. And I think there was a time when there was a hesitancy on the dealer to become instrumental in that decision. I don't think that's there anymore. I certainly open it up to this vast panel of people you have on this call. My experience says they're willing to accept that.
I think 80% of the dealers are. I also think a huge amount of those dealers, they work through a system that is their major alignment. But they also work with Indiana Furniture because our people know when a left desk and a left return really don't connect. Because whenever we miss those, we take crap about it, right? Like, why did you acknowledge something that doesn't fit together? And that an EDI system doesn't catch those things. I mean, it can if you do a whole configuration, but then again, 30% of our orders have a special on them. How do you EDI a special? Well, you have to set it up and have it into the system waiting for that order to come in. And again, everything you said, David, I absolutely agree with. But ask Angela Brown, Don Wallen's customer, if she's ready for EDI. I don't think she is. Did I get the name right, Christine? Is Don on here? Is it Angela Brown Interiors? You see
Kathy
people-
Andrews.
Kathy
Kathy
Andrews.
Andrews.
Yeah.
No, she's not ready at all.
Hey, why you gotta pick on me in front of all these people? Come on, man.
Well, yeah.
Because we love you the best, Don.
We only pick on the kids we like kindergarten.
Well,
I just remember hers being, very distinctive.
well, while you got me on here, the Eagle is about to land, so just FYI on that one.
All right.
Good.
Finally closing a deal, huh, Don?
Yeah,
going up
I'm good for one a year. One a year, that's it.
It's a big one.
Yes, it is. Great one. It's a beautiful, beautiful order. Wide variety of products.
It's all seating, Chad.
But it kind of blurred out. Those are thumbs.
Hey, Mike, I would like to take 1 minute, if I could, to share something. And just a reminder for everybody, we appreciate you all so much and enjoy collaborating with you in the good times and also in the challenging times, which is where we are. And we appreciate each of you so much, and we just ask for your help. We know that your customers are disappointed and they're maybe even angry, and we might need your help in diffusing that situation, not adding to it. And nobody wants to ship your product on time more than our service people that are having to reach out with this unfortunate news. So please help in any way that you can when they deliver that news. There's a lot of stress on them. They get stuck in the middle sometimes, and they're just trying to give you the best information they can that they have available. And like Mike mentioned earlier, sometimes all we can say is, we just need you to know it's not going to ship complete yet. We can't give you all the details yet because we want to allow manufacturing to pack every unit they possibly can before that truck pulls away. And so sometimes the reason we're waiting is so that we can give you more complete information. If we had to give you information at that minute, it would be, well, your order's not going to ship then, because really we're just trying to give them as much time as possible. And I know that's difficult, but in this interim, until we do get some dates shifted out to a more accurate date, that is where we find ourselves. So we just thank you for your help. thank you for your support. We're doing the best that we can. Somebody shared with me recently, they had some manufacturer that lost a lot of their service people just over the stress of that position. And so we are really trying to do our best, and we appreciate your support while we're doing so.
A couple of things I missed in some of the questions, but it was asked if we have competitive wages in our, do we need to pay more or whatever. Our wages are very competitive for what we do. We're maybe not the highest because there's a Toyota plant not far from here, but we certainly are very aware of what other situations, what other people are paying for similar jobs, and we feel very confident that we're competitive and in a good place on that. That's not our problem. And this ties back into the 40-hour flex plan that I talked about on the video, this innovative program that Chad came up with, is that money isn't always the motivator. And it's crazy to think that. I was talking to Mike Webb a while ago, and he's like, how could that be? Right? But it's just not always the most important thing. So competitive wages, we believe we're good there. And then the other thing is, how are others in the community doing? Well, Chad and myself and Max Verkamp were at the BIFMA conference last week, and the people there, I mean, you have to go all the way to Florida to hang out with the guys at JSI and Kimball at NOFS, but they were there, and we spent a lot of time talking to each other about our situations. And they're talking about the same things we are, and they've never seen it like this, and we feel like we're failing. We've never been this bad before. These are comments that they're making. So we're try to be very in tune with what's going on in the community and with our competitors. And, back in August when we had a meeting similar to this with the reps, I said, our goal is to get through this better than everybody else. Well, sitting here in January, late January, I would say I'm not sure we got through it better than anybody else, but I certainly believe that everybody here at Indiana has tried to get through it better than everybody else. And communications like this are a sign that we want to try and take suggestions from you and help get information and do what we can to best solve the problems that exist. And there's certainly plenty of them. So. Any other questions about all of that?
It's okay, Mike. I'll just, Don, you were joking, and we all have that, hey, it's all seating coming in. But somebody in the question said, hey, give us some good news. I'll tell you right now where we're sitting after, struggling the last really over a year to try and push seating higher and higher. Seating's stronger than it's ever been. We're setting new records for the amount that we produce regularly in seating. So you're starting to see lead times come down some. Right now, for the past several months, if we don't ship something out of seating, it's because we don't have the parts to do it. It's not because we're not able to get to the work. Last week in seating, I think we upholstered the most we've ever done in a week. And those are the kind of things that we're seeing out of that group now. That's going to help us continue to support all that new product we launched. So right now, that's where things are shifting. We're struggling the most at our FLA facility in case goods, like Mike said, but seating's strong right now, and getting stronger. So that's just going to keep getting better as we keep going. And another person had kind of asked, hey, how are you going to get more hours offering this 40-hour flex? People only work 40 hours. We're going after different people than the people we have. Like Mike said, what we found in manufacturing in this area, money is not the motivator for a new group of people. They want to balance. There's people that don't want to work all the time, don't want to make the maximum amount of money. They want to make enough money, and they want to have benefits. And those are the people we're going after at less than 1% unemployment. Everyone that wants a job has one. So with this program, we're trying to offer, we are offering something no one else does in manufacturing in this area. And we're going to get new people because of it. It's a steal play.
One thing I want to mention, Tammy was talking about best information and providing it, making sure we get the last piece on. There's always going to be times, and this is really the biggest problem we've had over the last several weeks is trying to gather all that timely. What Tammy's talking about, you can always poke holes in it. There's always going to be, hey, you might say that, but there was this one time that this happened and you guys didn't tell me. And those are going to come up. But what we're trying to do now with this re-acknowledgement is cover up. I don't mean cover up like in a bad way, but basically provide better information more timely based on the reality that they're dealing with. So that's where we're at. I don't know who all's on here, and I don't want to put them on the spot, but we have reps that have joined us recently that have worked with competitors. Is there anything that you'd say that we should do different based on your experience with them? Or, other than just make more furniture, we know that, but anybody have any comments there?
Mike, I think everybody's in the same boat out there. I got one manufacturer in Kansas City that just informed us that there's all COVID there. They can't get a hold of people, and management is now shut down, and they're just trying to keep their head above water. And that's in Kansas City. So knowing what you're going through out there, with knowing what JSI is probably doing and Kimball, they're all probably doing the same thing everybody else is. So you're not the only one. That I can assure you. You're not the only one dealing with this.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Paul's from Boston, if you guys couldn't tell.
Come on.
Oh, man. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you speaking up. One thing I said, someone mentioned National. We know they got really good lead times. So I was thinking we should place some orders, get them in, rebox them, and then ship their product out. It's all the same, isn't it?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah. Hey, Dana.
Quick question. On the re-acknowledged dates, when we do that, are we confident that those new dates will then be met, or what's, what we don't want to re-acknowledge stuff and then miss those dates or short ship on those dates?
Good question. And I can tell you that my initial conversations with Brennan and then also Chad, and I'll let Chad speak to this if he wants after I talk about it a little bit. We knew how many literally pieces to the number of pieces we were behind. The stuff that should have shipped that isn't, stuff that isn't ready that should be. And we knew basically based on how many pieces we've been producing over the last several weeks, what we can produce likely next week and the week after. So you do the math on that. And then I said, now take a number that's something less than that, because we certainly don't want to re-acknowledge and then miss them. That's like the worst thing we could possibly do. So we believe we're in the worst part of the storm. We're going to be here for a couple of weeks, likely. So we take all that into consideration, and we're at a certain point. It's leading up to a certain number of days or a number of weeks. So based on pretty detailed information and in a bucket of basically orders that Brennan's going to be providing to us, we are very confident, and we're going to re-acknowledge some at 3 weeks and some at an extra 4, and that's with the utmost confidence that that we will make every one of those dates.
Okay.
Now, the wild card there is, I don't think in that scenario, the employment issue is as big of a wild card. It still could be, but that's not as big as a wild card as simply not getting drawer stock or something. I had the guy that I didn't even know they needed drawers, like we use vinyl foil drawers, wanted to know if we do ours internally. I said no, but I'm guessing you need a supplier because we're having issues with that. So things like that we can't control, but we'll also do our best to predict what's going to happen. And if we're watching things like that, that allows us to better focus on that rather than trying to scramble and figure out what's not going to ship and communicating to customers and all that. So that question, Brennan or Dana, was the utmost importance. If we're going to do this, this has to be what happens.
Right.
Chad, anything you want to add there?
No, you're spot on. Brennan and I are working on just doing a ground up. What are we actually making today? Because what we're actually making specifically at FLA is really 30% less than when we took those orders, 12 weeks ago, what we thought we could make because of staffing. So we're resetting this based on what we're able to do right now. And then we've got just a very gradual ramp planned in, coming in. Because there's some of the things that are occurring right now that we know are going to ease up. And then two, we do believe we're going to get a tick better with this new staffing plan that we've got. But we're trying to play it a little more on the conservative side and make sure that we can hit that output.
And I want to add too, we've talked a lot about the staffing. This doesn't solve all of our problems. It doesn't solve all of our employment problems. It doesn't solve all of our supply chain problems or anything else. We still have to be really, really diligent in all the other things we do, because we can't have all 40-hour workers. We have to have full-time employees and people that are doing, all that work too. This is a supplemental thing to do that. So this isn't it's not going to solve it. We don't think it's going to be the cure-all, but it's certainly some medicine that we can take to try and help.
I think what we're seeing already is at least getting more people talking about us too, and we're getting applications that aren't for 40 hours. Just making a splash right now.
The first day we launched it. Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry. I was got a quick question. Do you want to finish that? You can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right, quick question. Do you guys think we can eliminate where I'm having a rash of problems? Typically you guys ship on Fridays, and then our new guy Nolan sends an email to the client. They were supposed to receive 10 desks and they only received 9, or only 9 shipped. And it could be no rhyme or reason. It could be a desk, it could be a credenza, it could be a lateral file.
Right.
And then that they're waiting for this product for 10, 12, 13 weeks or whatever. And then the client either has to wait to install or go ahead and install and back order whatever pieces and then go back out. And then the dealers are back on our ass. Hey, I had to go back out. I had to drive my guys, had to go 3 hours and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Can we really need to eliminate that? You know what I mean? Because that going to help with the new acknowledgement deal?
Yes, the answer is clearly yes. And the discussion that customer service team had with me the other day, that was a problem. I know it was, hey, can we focus on complete orders? We need to ship complete orders. And then they said, you think we can ship complete orders if we do this? And then they said, hey, it's very important that we ship complete orders. So the point was that we're very well taken, that is a huge problem. And the re-acknowledgement, what it does is it opens up the view that our logistics team has of when they should anticipate and get product compared to when they're actually getting it. Because I'm going to step back a second to our manufacturing process. Our manufacturing process, even though we have a 14-week lead time or 15 or 16 or whatever it's going to end up at, our manufacturing process is still the same. It's still set up for 4 days at plywood, 4 days at assembly and finish, and then it should have a week buffer to catch anything up. That's very basic numbers, and there's some waiting time in there. But essentially, and Chad's nodding his head, it's a 9 to 10 day workday process, right, Chad? That's accurate. The problem is whenever plywood takes 5 or 6 days to get their parts done, and one part's done on the first day and another part's done on the 6th day. Now you've taken 50% of that bumped it out. Now you go to the assembly plants or finished plants, and they're waiting for their parts to assemble, and it's taking them now 2 or 3 days longer than expected, or sometimes even longer if something falls out. Now we've eaten up all of our manufacturing time, and we've eaten up the buffer that we had. Therefore, Jeff is trying to plan his loads and starts loading the truck, like I said earlier, right up till Friday night. That's when it's getting. It used to be a few pieces they would get. Now it's that's when everything's getting done, is the week that it's supposed to ship, and when it falls out, it doesn't happen. So when we re-acknowledge, what happens is it gives us the chance to reset the availability of time for Jeff to see. Jeff's our logistics manager, to see really the window of product he's going to get, and has the proper amount of time to plan his trucks to get them complete. And then also we're going to talk, and we have already a little bit more about how do we prioritize scheduling. We talked to Brendan about this. How does his team prioritize their scheduling based on the order, so parts don't end up getting spread apart like that. They come closer together in bunches, and that's a scheduling thing. But to answer your question, Don, this again, you think a lot of things will solve problems, but because we can't supply, some of the supply chain issues are different, but this should definitely help and fix in that arena. Chad, did I say anything that was incorrect there, or anything you would want to change based on what you know about manufacturing?
No, you've got it right. We're trying to make everything right now the week we're trying to ship it to. So what that means is anything that falls out that we have to recover, because maybe there's veneer checking, or maybe we found a sand through, or we sprayed it a little heavy or something, that immediately isn't going to make it now, because we don't have that recovery time. So if we're trying to make that on a Friday, that's why we can't tell you what's not going to make it, because if one of those falls out and it just isn't up to par for the quality, then it's not going. But doing this re-acknowledgement, like Mike said, we get our normal schedule back, and our process can work to get more complete orders.
Yeah, and the issue then, that the dealer has to deal with multiple trips and all that, I totally am empathetic to that, very empathetic to it. But the reality is, we can't recover that from the problems that we're facing. In other words, I can't go to the drawer manufacturer and say, hey, look, you need to pay for this extra trip that this dealer took. They're just not going to absorb that. Or I don't think we can go to the employees that didn't show up that day and say, hey, we're going to take this out of your pay because these dealers had to take another trip. You can't work your way back that way for us to recover that. So if there were all these trips, and the best thing we can do is avoid the extra trips, but we also can't go back and cover all those costs. And I don't think it's their poor planning or anything. It's unfortunately just a circumstance of the way the world is working right now.
Right. And I mean, that's my point exactly. We got to avoid that. So my last statement here is, this re-acknowledgement, I mean, obviously that you kind of surprised us all with that, but I think it's a necessity. But myself and a lot of my colleagues that are on this call, we went through this before. We went through it with Mayline Safeco when they built a new plant over in Iowa. And there is little bit of a backlash at first, and there is some cancellation of orders. But you really need to make a strong, put together a good letter that explains everything for everybody to be ready to send to the clients. The big mishap that those guys made is they re-acknowledged twice. They didn't only do it one time. Then they came back another 5 weeks later and said, oh, they had an oh shit moment, and then had to re-acknowledge again. So whatever you guys decide on this time, don't do it a second time, because that's a kiss of death.
Yeah. I hear you loud and clear. And I remember hearing from a lot of you how painful that was. And
Yes.
I think our circumstances are a little different, and that we know what we have. We know the orders that exist, and we also know the people that we have and the people we can count on, and then the ones that are flexing on us, and then also the equipment. So I think we can be a lot more predictable. It's not a factory move or a computer implementation or anything like that. Again, our systems are still in place, our processes are in place. Key people that have key jobs are all in place. So hear you loud and clear, Don, but I think we're going to execute this very well. I mean, as painful as it's going to be, we're knowing what we're getting into and what it's going to do to help some of the other issues. So this number on the board behind me, if some of you reps don't have it, that's my cell phone number. So you can write that down. When I get into the re-acknowledgement, just have a few things I want to say about that. You can call me about anything, almost any time. I may or may not answer, but certainly if you call my cell phone, that's the best way to get a hold of me, or text me. And I will promise you, we will not run from anybody or anything or any conversation. We've had plenty of really tough ones already. And we're willing to do that. So people can call me or tell me who I need to call to try and explain, or, take a tongue lashing or whatever needs to happen. I'm here to do that. And I definitely prefer that happens, those sorts of conversations happen with me and not our frontline customer service team, because they're executing other things. That's not, they'll provide information and certainly communicate difficult things, but that's not what we need them spending their time doing. But I certainly am willing to and glad to do that to help out with any relationships that are in danger. So the re-acknowledge process, again, it's not every order in-house. It's the orders that predominantly are manufactured at Flatline Assembly. So there's a portion of our canvas product that has been scheduled there, and then we have what we call DuBois product, and that's where a lot of laminate products are made as well. The DuBois orders aren't affected, so it's predominantly the FLA is where our big backlog is. We know a lot of times there's products that are mixed in with that, so we're trying to be careful about, if it's mostly a seating order and there's one occasional table, we'll try and sort through that. But I can't tell you any given order right now where it's going to fall, but we're going to move these orders. Once we re-acknowledge, then we'll start to determine if we need to split seating orders off and things like that. But it will be predominantly, well, not predominantly, it is really FLA laminate and wood case goods that we're talking about. Then also we're working on a report. We think we can get this. I don't want to promise this, but our goal here is to get a rep report for each rep, each individual rep of orders that have been affected, so we can clearly send them just to you. You don't have to sort through a bunch of stuff. So that's our goal, is to split those out. Is that right, Tim? I know we talked about that. I don't know if you've had any other conversations.
We'll be able to do that. Once we determine, we're waiting for the direction from production on which orders, to isolate, to make this move and exactly where to put them. And once we have that, we'll work with our IT department for the moves and also for reports that we can share with you, which orders have been affected, where they came from, where they moved to. The other thing I'll mention is, one thing we asked from production is, if there is an order out there or orders that are predominantly seating and DuBois that happen to have a small amount of FLA product that we think we might avoid a move on, we're going to do that. So that's something else, because sometimes it's a seating order that just has an occasional table with it that's coming from FLA. And if we could not disrupt those orders, we're going to try to do that. So that's why we are waiting on the list from them and not just making that decision ourselves, because we're hoping for some exclusions where possible.
Hey, Mike, here's a $1 million question. So on Monday next week, what is the actual lead time going to be for products coming out of the FLA plant?
I'm sorry, we can't hear
New
you.
orders.
We're not, I mean, I think that we don't have the answer to that yet. We will have it, but I don't know. You might be able to estimate, Mike, but
Yeah.
because we're still waiting for direction on those orders, I don't know it yet.
Yeah, and the answer is depends on how much we have to re-acknowledge, which we're getting a pretty good sense of. And then also, we haven't seen specifically how Chad's and Brennan's plan for the escalating number of units that they can make based on COVID subsiding and other things and other improvements. So I can tell you it could be anywhere from an additional 2 to 4 or 5 weeks as to what they were this week. Is that, Chad, would you think that that's about right? It could be 2, it could be 5.
Yeah, without doing the math, I think it's in that range. We'll be doing that math this weekend and Monday morning.
Yeah. Which,
I know that's a very difficult thing to hear. That's a very, we're getting out there with close to Han and and all those guys, but it is what it is.
Yeah. The other thing that we, as we get closer to what that date is and the reset, and we get into this a month from now and 6 weeks from now, we're going to have a much better sense of what we're producing at that time, how much we've been able to flex in other parts of our organization, and use people and any other things that we're doing that are going to improve our overall efficiencies. So I think even though that's where they're at, there's a better chance based on what we're doing that they're going to be able to come down quicker. And obviously, how many people are going to wait 18 weeks for furniture, right? I mean, it's going to be hard. We know that the transactional business is going to be really tough.
Hey, Mike, one other quick question going back to your labor challenges. So how would you characterize, like, for example, the percentage, how much of your labor struggles are COVID or other illnesses where people are just out because they're sick versus people that, the unemployment situation or people that just don't want to work?
I'll go through a few numbers that I know and I've discussed with Ashley and try and understand. So just so I know where we're at whenever I have conversations. We have approximately 200 manufacturing positions, okay, hourly manufacturing positions. There's 100 to 120 people are as reliable as anything, anybody, anywhere. I mean, we can count on them, okay? Then there's another group of about 30 or 40. So now we're up to, 150, 160 that are pretty good, and we know they're here, and a lot of those are now experiencing COVID and other illnesses. So part of our problem since probably January 1 to now, the difference between us struggling to keep up and missing 8 to 10 items and us missing many, many more than that is really the surge in COVID. Now, I'd say it's a difference between literally us not having to have this conversation about re-acknowledging and us having it. Now, we might have been late and but I think we could have caught up. But really, our absenteeism due to COVID, and some of it goes way back to early December where it started in plywood, and then we started getting a little behind, and then we're trying to catch up, and then it got worse, and then after the holidays, it got really bad, and we've been dealing with it. So there's now we're at a base employment of about 170. On Monday, we had 27 open positions. And then any given day, we're missing 20 people right now, but 20 to 30 maybe. Like I know, I hear numbers, at FLA, they're missing 40% of their population on some days recently, up to and or more, right, Chad?
It can swing day to day. A good day, a normal day, we're missing about 10% of our people. And that's due to leaves or planned days off or things like that. About 10% out each day is about normal. But it'll swing now anywhere from 10% to 40%. And Monday could be 10 and Tuesday's 40, and then it's back to 15%. And it's that's the unpredictable nature of the workforce right now. And it's due to, you know, somebody thinks they're sick, so they want to go take a test, or a kid that's a close contact, so somebody's got to stay with that kid, and it's literally happening overnight. That's the unpredictability factor. On, you know, it's really become show up, shift starts at 6. At 6:01, you look around and go, all right, what's the game plan for today? Because here's who I've got.
Dana, I'm not sure if that totally answers your question. It certainly wasn't a concise answer, but.
No, just curious as to, you know, if COVID gets better and all that kind of goes away at some point, you know, it gives you a better baseline of where your employment situation will be, and that's kind of
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not just someone sick or has COVID, it's their close contact or childcare, or, you know, everybody knows, everybody's dealt with it for 2 years now. So I'm, you know, I don't have to belabor it, but it's, yeah.
It is also the root of a lot of our supply issues too, because our suppliers are going through the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything that we didn't cover that we needed to? Anybody
Yeah,
from
Mike wants to know if we'll adjust the sales goals for 2022. He tried to put that on Don Wallen, but I wasn't going to have that. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah.
I would say there's not a plan to do so, but at this point, nothing's probably completely off the table.
Yeah. We will look at that.
We certainly believe we have the best sales force in the industry, and that you all and us together can overcome anything, even this particularly difficult level of hell that we find ourselves in.
Agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Really do appreciate all of our sales reps. We can't do what we do without you working out there for us. And again, disappointed that this is where we're at, but I assure you we will be better when this all gets through. We're going to be way better at everything, more efficient, and we'll continue to work very hard for all of your successes. Anything else from anybody?
Thank you, Mike, Patty, Tammy, and Chad.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. All right.
Thanks, everybody,
Have a good
for all your
evening.
efforts. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.